Are you a basketball player that loves playing basketball? You know, when I ask a lot of the high school and college players that I work with, how much do you plan to play basketball in the off season? Typically I get answers back like all the time or quite a lot. But when we dig into that question a little deeper, a lot of times they rethink their answer. If you, like them, are one of those players that really wants to improve this summer during your off season, then we're going to share an activity that you really need to dedicate some time towards that's going to be critical for your improvement this summer. Let's jump in and discuss. Welcome back to Hard Smart Together. I'm Coach Dave. I'm here every week to help basketball players become the smart, confident players that coaches love. So we're in summer and it's your off season. And so you'll probably see a common theme over the last few weeks where we're talking about you improving during your off season and things that you can do, activities, basketball activities that you can incorporate that really help you improve. And if you saw last week, it was about your shooting workout and really making that more efficient and really dedicating the time to become a better shooter and how to do that, how to develop your own shooting workout. So we talked about that a little bit last week. We're going to shift gears a little bit this week, but it's in the same theme. It's on becoming a better basketball player this summer. And what we're going to talk about today is an activity that I really don't think a lot of today's players spend enough time at. So this is another thing that as you're looking at all your basketball activities you do this summer, I want you to think of this, and we're going to go through, what the activity is and really what are the benefits to this, okay? How can it make you a better player? We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video as well. So, as you know, I always like to give a free gift. Just for joining me. So today's no different. If you want to be one of those smart, confident players that stand out to coaches, I've got a free checklist. It is 8 intangible skills that coaches love to see in players. It's in checklist form, but it also gives you some ways to implement those, some ways to practice each one of those skills that these coaches love to see in the players. And so you can download that, you can scan the QR code below, or I'll even put a link in the description below. If you're on the podcast, simply go to hardsmarttogether.com/intangibles. Again, it's hardsmarttogether.com/intangibles, and I'll be sure and get you that checklist. But today's topic is, this activity that today's players don't spend enough time at, and I'm gonna start by telling you a story of kind of my experience as a high school player. And I've had a lot of basketball experiences. My basketball career has spanned, from playing in high school, playing in college, coaching at multiple different levels, all the way up to the Division I level. It's spanned, coaching at some of the most prestigious camps in the nation. But if you asked me, what is some of the best basketball memories you had? Out of all those experiences, what are some of the greatest basketball memories you have? I would have to tell you about an open gym that we used to have when I was in high school. Now let me describe this for you. And I just want to give a shout out to one of the greatest coaches, most influential coaches that I've ever known, Hans Delanoy. From San Ramon High School. It was a rival high school. That's what's crazy. But Hans, if you ever watch this video, shout out to you. You created, for not just me, but for a lot of players, one of the greatest basketball experiences we'll ever have. So let me describe this open gym. Again, it's rival high school. But Hans used to open up a gym during the off season, okay, all the way up to the start of high school season. And it was pretty simple concept, right? Teams showed up, players showed up, and we played basketball. But let me tell you about it. So every team in our league pretty much sent their varsity team to play. And even some JV players went to play at this open gym. But at least like 5 players from every school showed up. Now we're in the San Francisco Bay Area, so there's a lot of high schools in this area, and there was a lot of teams from other leagues that would send teams to play in this open gym, okay? And then there was, college players that maybe had gone to each one of these high schools that heard about this and would come back and play in this open gym. And, there was just single players that would come and want to play. So how many players would come? I'm going to do a little math here, right? So what we had is the main gym had 3 courts, full courts that went sideways in the gym. And then there was an old gym that had a full court as well. Now, each one of those courts would have games going at all times. And on top of that, there was an average of probably about 2 teams waiting for each court to get onto the court, okay? It was a really simple concept. If you showed up with a team, you could play with that team. So my high school, we had a group of guys from our varsity team that would show up and play together. A lot of high schools did that. But there was no real organization other than if you showed up with a team, you could play and with them. And if you didn't show up with a team, they would formulate some other teams, some fair teams to put you on a team. And therefore, then it was winner's court. So you went from, there was a loser's court and it rotated up and you got to a winner's court. After the loser's court, you had to go over to the old gym and play the coach's team. The coach's team never left the old gym and they never had to rotate, but they just got to play until the coaches got worn out. But then if you lost there, you had to go back and like I said, there was teams waiting because there was so many teams to get on. And if you lost too many games in a row, you might find yourself sitting for a half an hour or so trying to get back on and work your way back up to the winner's court. So that was the experience. I mean, there was several NBA players that came out of that open gym, a lot of high school players that went on to play college, a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of college players that came back to play, these high-level games, and they were incredibly competitive and they were great games, but they weren't organized. We weren't running offenses, we weren't running any specific defenses, there was no coaching that went on, there was no drills, things of that nature. So that question I ask players a lot of times, which is, how much do you plan to play basketball in the off season? And they say, a lot. Back then, if I had to ask myself that question, I probably would have turned it around. How much do you plan on doing drills to develop your game? How much do you plan on, going on AAU tournament trips and playing in AAU games? Because back then, we didn't do enough of that. We didn't do enough working on our game, working with a trainer, doing drills, going on AAU tournaments, but we played all the time. In fact, I can tell you, that is an example of an unbelievable open gym and an unbelievable experience. But back then, I could tell you every day of the week and the weekend where the open gyms were. Now, they weren't as great as that open gym. I give that as just like, that was like the shining star of open gyms, right? But they were still pretty good and you were always going to get in games. Now, not just were there open gyms at, almost every church had a gym and there was an open gym some day of the week. A lot of schools had open gyms, community centers had open gyms. But if you didn't want to go to a gym, there was also games, organized games, and people knew specific times that you would show up at specific playgrounds and play basketball. Just play. Pick up a team, get on a team, and play basketball. Now that's an activity, we need some balance, I think, in today's game, but I'm going to talk to you just playing the game of basketball can help you improve as a basketball player in this off season. And you're probably not doing enough of it, just like I probably wasn't working on my game from a drill perspective, working on my shot, working on my ball handling, working on my defense, working on all the different aspects of the game, working on my basketball IQ. Some of those things were not as organized back then, so I probably didn't get enough of that. But today's player doesn't get to play enough. So you as a player need to take responsibility this offseason and think, how much time am I dedicating to playing basketball versus basketball activities? How much am I getting an opportunity to play? And why is that important? So let's talk about the reasons that that's so important to take that responsibility on and to play. We'll talk about ways to do it in today's world. But why is it so important? When I was playing in those games as a high school player back then, the only pressure was I didn't want to sit, okay? So there was a lot less pressure from, I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I wasn't trying to impress a coach. I wasn't trying to get playing time from a coach. I wasn't trying to impress fans in the stands. I wasn't trying to get that college coach that's watching me play to look my way and maybe, take an interest in me. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I wasn't trying to earn playing time. All I was trying to do is win those games, right? The only people I needed to impress is my teammates on the court because, we all wanted to play well for each other. So there was less pressure, which freed up your game a bit. Also, it developed a competitive spirit because you have to look to, it's not a coach telling you we got to win this possession, we got to win this play, we got to win this game, you got to do this. You had to, if you didn't want to sit and wait, if you didn't want to be on the loser's court, if you didn't want to go to the old gym, which was, dark, dingy, and dirty, right? Like you didn't want to go to the old gym to play the coach's team. You wanted to be on the winner's court and you wanted to hold the winner's court. That was kind of what you were playing for as you made your way through these different games. So you developed your own sense of competitive spirit. And you didn't have to rely on a coach, an AAU team, a college coach, any of these things for your competitive spirit. So one, it takes the pressure off, and two, it helps you develop your competitive spirit. The next thing it does is you are working on your game. In today's world, you might have a trainer, you do drills all the time, you're working on moves, you're working on ball handling, hopefully you're working on defense, since I talk a lot about defense, your on-ball defense and your off-ball defense and your help defense and your communication and all these things that you're working on all the time. Playing basketball in in the sense that I'm talking about, that can be kind of your laboratory. You get to see what works, what doesn't work. Does that move that my trainer's been having me work on every week, 10 times a set, 100 times a day, does that move work? Would I get a real defender across from me? What works, what doesn't work? Now you can start implementing some of these things into your game in a non-pressure, nobody's judging it. Now you can just kind of throw it out. Oh, I saw on one of Coach Dave's videos, he was talking about communications with teammates and talking about, using names when you make a pass, or using names when you're asking for the ball, or using names on defense, or communicating on defense, things of that nature. Does that work? Oh, here's a non-pressure situation that you can implement these things and see what works, what doesn't work for you. Then the last thing that playing basketball does for you is develops your love for the game. I don't know if you can hear the passion in my voice when I talk about the memories of this open gym, right? But it truly is some of the greatest memories of my high school career. And I want you to have that same passion. I want you to have that same love for the game. I want you to have fun. These times were fun. They were competitive and they were fun. And so this is how you develop your love for the game and keep your love for the game. Because let me tell you, continuing only doing drills, only going to training sessions, only going on AAU trips, only trying to impress college coaches, only trying to, get your coach's attention, that can become a grind. And we don't want the game of basketball to be a grind. We want you to have that passion that you hopefully have today. We want you to keep that passion going forward. Now, I talk about open gyms and I talk about this being your responsibility. So how can you play more basketball? Well, one, open gyms of today are a little different. If you're a coach out there and you have an open gym, open gyms of today have become a little bit like maybe more mellow practices. There's instruction given, there's, drills that are being done. Yeah, you might play some games, but you're organizing the teams, different things. There's too much organization to it. If you're a coach out there, if you're a parent out there, if you have, the ability to get together a group of kids to give them the ability to play in an open gym or even on a playground, organize that for them. You don't have to be as great of an open gym as Hans developed. You don't need 60, 100 guys showing up or 100 players showing up. You just need, a group of kids that want to play and give them the opportunity to just play. This needs to be kind of come into your activities this summer. But if you're a player and maybe you're, don't have a coach that's going to open the gym for you, call up some of your teammates. Get out to a playground. A time that you're not working on a play, a time that you're not working on the organization. Get into a gym, get out on a playground. You could have, a 5-on-5 if you can get 10 players together. You can have 3-on-3 if you just get 6 players together. 2-on-2 if you get 4 players together. But play the game of basketball. Develop that love for the game. Take the pressure off and take responsibility for putting this activity, which today just doesn't get done enough, into the activities that you have planned for your summer when it comes to basketball improvement. Because let me tell you something, at the end of the summer, you might look back and the most improvement that you make might be in the open gym or the just playground runs that you had during the summer. So that's my tip for the week. A little different from the organized, drills that I might give you in the past. This is really important for you as well, though. So always love the likes, always love the comments. Let me know in a comment below, how often do you play, and do you plan to play some more after listening to this? And then in addition to that, if you know anybody who could really benefit from hearing this message, another player, your son, your daughter, a coach, a parent, anybody that could benefit from hearing this message, please go ahead and forward this video on to them. It's really the greatest compliment I get is when people start sharing these videos. So until next week, remember to play hard, play smart, and play together. See you next week.